Okay, good children. How are you doing? I hope you are good. All right, welcome to chess class. I hope you remember that chess class is a class where thinkers are raised and leaders are made. Chess class is not just a class where we come to play the game of chess. Chess is a tool that helps fine tune our thinking ability, all right, for creativity. It's a tool for fine tuning our thinking ability for creativity. And like I always tell you, that it's only those who are thinking that are permitted to be rising. Only those who are thinking are permitted to be rising. And of course, we know that thinkers are leaders. And that's why chess class is the class where thinkers are raised and leaders are made. So, what we're doing in chess class is to fine tune all our abilities for problem solving. All right. So, once more, welcome to chess class where thinkers are raised and leaders are made. All right. You remember that when we started our class, we talked about problem solving, solution and perception, where we worked on our concentration. Remember the four basics in chess: the concentration, the thinking, the reasoning, and the decision making. So we started with our concentration, working on our concentration when we talked about problem solving, solution, and perception. That is your concentration that helps you to be able to be a problem solver. Your concentration is a critical skill in problem solving. So we talked about that. And then we moved on to diligence for emergence when we talked about your hands must be diligent in working. And that was when we talked about the moves and all the captures, all the pieces. Now, even though you know how the knight moves, and then you're looking at the knight is not going to move by itself until you move it. So we said nothing works until you work it out. So there's a place for working it out. So we talked about diligence or emergence. Now we're going to be looking this time on being proactive rather than be reactive in problem solving. We want to look at the coordination between our thinking, which takes place in our brain, and our reasoning, which takes place in our mind. So the coordination of the brain and the mind in taking decision, in thinking ahead of time to solve problems. All right. I told you that it's only those who see ahead and think ahead that be ahead. Those who see ahead and think ahead be ahead. You remember the case study we talked about Joseph. He was able to see ahead. Okay, he was able to think ahead, see ahead, so he became the leader. So it's only those who think and see ahead that become great leaders. So we're going to be looking at the coordination of our brain and our minds, all right, in giving solution to problems, even problems that are not yet here. All right, so we're going to be looking at that, all right, in this series. But before we do that, let's remind ourselves about some of the things we talked about and we did in our last session. All right, okay, we're going to be looking at that. You remember we talked about the chess notation, Okay, when we talked about the A1, the B1, the C, the D, the E, the F, the G, the H, we talked about the 1, 2, 3 of it, and of course, how that gives names to each of the squares on the board. You remember we have 64 squares, the white, the black, all right? I remember that I chess notation like this. There is your A1, your B1, okay, your C1, your D1, your E1, your F1, your G1, and your H1, which are the rook, the knight, the bishop, the rook, the knight, the bishop, and of course your queen on D, your king on E. And all of these ones in the front are the pawns. These are the pawns. All right, you remember? The same thing goes for the black. And you know, this pawn is your H2, this is your G2, this is your F2, this is your A2, B2, C2, D2, and E2. All right, so we talked about all of those ones, and we talked about how each of these pieces move and how they capture. Now, remember that the pawn starts first, or the knight. And I told you why the pawn starts first, because the pawns are the ones in the front and nothing blocks the pawns. So the pawns can move. The knight also can start. Why? Because even when the knight is blocked, he can jump, he can move and find his way out. So that's why the knight and the pawns start first. Now let's see and refreshing our memories on how the pawn moves. You remember? Okay, I told you I'll be telling you that even when you have all of these pawns, you have the two knights on the white. There's a particular pawn you start with, and there's a particular knight we start with. We're going to talk about that in this session. All right, but let's just remind ourselves how the pawn moves, how the pawn captures, and all the pieces, as it were, how they move and how they capture, to remind ourselves. Now let's assume I move this. I move my C2. Now you remember that my pawn can move 2 steps. The first time I can see the indication on the board. All right, now you are seeing the indication on the board because we are using a 3D board. Now ordinarily, if you're using your normal board, you can't see this. You have to think about that yourself, because we're using a 3D board. That is why it's showing you where the pawn can go to. Now I want to move this. I move it just 1 step. Can you see that? I move it just 1 step. Now let's assume the black wants to play the knight. You remember the knight can do 1, 2 turn. So I can do 1, 2 turn and come here. You see that? That is for the knight. That is how the knight moves. Remember? Now let's assume I want to play my queen. You remember my queen can move this way. That is what is blocking the queen. I've played it. Now which other thing is blocking the queen? Now this pawn. Can you see that? So let's assume I play this pawn 1 step as well. Now you can see the parts of the queen is played. Now let's assume I want to play this bishop. You remember this bishop? I want to play this bishop. So what is blocking this bishop? You will see on the board that b7 and d7 are blocking the bishop. So let's assume I want to play his part first. So I have to play this. Can you see? I play that so that the path can be cleared. Then my bishop can move. Now it's the turn of the whites to play. Now let's assume I want to play my queen now. See, now the two parts have been cleared. When we talked about problem solving, we have solved the problem for that queen to come out. The queen has a problem, but now we have solved. Now, you know, the queen moves diagonally like the bishop. You know, you remember you can move horizontally or vertically like the rook, that is up, down, and to the sides. But now I've decided to move my queen like the bishop. So let's assume I'm coming here. All right, I want to come. Okay, let's assume I'm coming here. Can you see that my queen has moved out? Now I want to move my bishop for the black. You see, my bishop, can you see, moves like the queen? All right, diagonally as well. So let's assume I'm coming here, moving the queen and the bishop. Now let's assume I want to play this bishop. Now, you can see this bishop can move diagonally. And if you see moving diagonally, the bishop on f1, you can see it can move diagonally to go and take the pawn on b5. Now, the point or the question is, the first thing that we thought about concentration, you can see that the bishop can move all the way down to go and take b5. But moving that to your thinking, I can move straight diagonally to go and take that. But your reasoning should come to play. I told you when you stop at thinking, you only get a limited result. All right. And I told you result is what terminates insult. When you get good result, then it clears off insult. So result is what terminates insult. Now, your result matters here. If I move my f1, which is my bishop, diagonal to go and take that pawn on b5, I can only take 1 point. You remember the the pawn is 1 point. Now, if I take that, let me just show you. So you see why you need critical thinking and reasoning to get results. Let me show you. Now, chess class is a practical class. Now, if I go down, because I'm in haste, I'm so in hurry to go and take, and then I come here to take this guy. Can you see? I've taken one. Now, what will be the repercussion of my being in haste to take? Now, you will see that there is something here that can take me. All right? You can see my bishop will take this guy. My bishop will take that. Now you can now see that I've taken 1 to lose 3. Those who think ahead, be ahead. Now, if you had not done that, all right, you wouldn't have lost your 3 points. All right. So it is better for you to take caution in thinking first before taking action. When you don't think, you stink. It's only those who are thinking that are permitted to be rising. Now let's go ahead. Now that this has happened, now what can I do? You remember I told you we're going to be looking at how to think ahead, which is being proactive, and then being reactive. You said you want to see how being proactive is better than being reactive. Reactive is now you have made a mistake. How can you correct the mistake? All right. Now let's assume I've made a mistake. I want to correct the mistake. Now, what do you think I can do? Now, there are 2 things I can do here to correct my mistake. All right. Now the first one is to bring my b1 knight to a3. Now you can see it, my b1 knight to a3. Now somebody want to ask, why am I bringing out my b1 knight to a3? Now if I bring that b1 knight to a3, is to go get the bishop. So when I get the bishop, now I'm beginning to rise. All right, I'm beginning to rise. Now I'm trying to work out a solution, all right, to solving that problem. Now another thing I can do is to play my pawn 1 step. Now let's see how that works. Now let's assume I play my pawn 1 step. All right, let's see how I'm going to solve that problem. Now let's assume this guy also plays, let's say he plays this pawn 1 step, or he plays 2 steps. Now that is another problem. Now you have to prioritize. Prioritize means you look at which one should I do first. Now I was going to get with this pawn, can you see the pawn on c4 now? All right, the pawn on c4 is going to get the bishop, but now the pawn on h5 is attacking my queen. Okay, so which one should I do first? Should I take the bishop on on b5, or to take away my queen so that this pawn will not take my queen. So which one is better? That is one of the things you have to do to solve problems. You have to think, you have to reason. Now let's bring it from concentration. I've seen that I can take the bishop on b5, all right, with this pawn, all right. So if I take this bishop, the bishop on b5, you can see it on the board, I'll take 3 points. But this guy has played this so that he can take my queen. So which one will I play? My queen, because my queen is 9. So I don't want him to take my queen, so I have to play that. All right. Now let's assume he plays his rook. You remember the rook can move diagonally, so he plays the rook now. Now I can go back and take the bishop I wanted to take. See? Now I can take this bishop. Now can you see that? Can you see that? Now if you look at the board now, I've succeeded in taking 4 points and then he has only 3. Now why? I just showed you how you can react when you have made a mistake. That is not when to cry. You just sit down. What have I done? I shouldn't have done this. What can I do to correct it? So I just showed you the part of being reactive. But I told you it is better to be proactive. Now, if you had been proactive, you wouldn't have moved that bishop in the first place so that it won't be captured. But you can see the difference between being proactive and being reactive. Now, the next thing, the pawn is there. You can see the pawn with the indication on the board, the red square. Now, that pawn is targeting what? You need to look at it. The pawn is a problem there. What is the pawn doing? The pawn wants to take my knight. He wants to take my knight. And if he takes that knight, then he's taking away my 3 points. All right. So how can I be proactive? Now, can I take my knight away? Or is there anything that can take the pawn? The pawn on a5. Is there anything? Now, if I take my knight away, yes, I've solved that problem, but it's not adding anything to me. So what can I do? I can decide to move my rook. Now, if I move my rook, I can take away that pawn. Can you see? I've solved that problem. I've added a point to my point. So I'm leading. Those who think ahead, be ahead. Now, from here, we're going to move on to, how to coordinate these 3: concentration, your thinking, your reasoning, and then to making decision. I'm going to show you how that inform the decisions we take in solving problems. All right. Now we have seen again the moves of the pawn, the capture of the pawn. We have seen the moves of the rook, the capture of the rook. We have seen the moves of the knight, the capture of the knight. We have seen the moves of the queen, the capture of the queen. Of course, the king moves and captures one step, any square at a time, one square at a time. All right, so we've been able to see now, go back to see how all of these pieces move and how all of these pieces capture. And then we have linked our concentration to our thinking in our brain, concentration with our eyes, our thinking with our brain, and then our reasoning in our minds. Now, putting all of these ones together still form the basis of our concentration for decision. So we're going to launch this from here to see how that inform our decision. Thank you so much for this class. I'll see you next time. Thank you.